theyeshiva.net.
Nun test, page nun test, the last two pages. So the Gemara said in Meseches Avodah Zarah something quite astounding, that Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz ovdei Avodah Zarah b'tarahen. That's what the Chazal teaches in Meseches Avodah Zarah in the first parak of Ches. Rabbi Shmuel said that the Jewish people who live in Chutz La'aretz are ovdei Avodah Zarah. Kavayachal, so to speak, they worship idols, but he adds betahara, in purity. What does it mean in purity? Purity means innocently, sincerely. Rashi, I think, says over there that they don't have sima slave. It's not they're trying to be ovdei Avodah Zarah chas v'shalom. So b'chutz la'aretz, it's Jews in Chutz La'aretz. Erlichiyid. Betahara means in their mind they're doing something pure. It's not something that they are consciously and intentionally trying chas chalilu v'chas to do avodah zarah. That's why he says the word betahara. And he brings an example: a Jew makes an idolater makes a party, and all the Jews are invited because they're living among them. And even though they're eating kosher food and they have a shamash there, nonetheless, it's already a connection to avodah zarah. The question he asks in the Maamar is that it seems so strange because Rov Yisrael b'chutz la'aretz. How can Rabbi Shmuel make such a statement? He wanted to bring out the mile of living in Eretz Yisrael and the mile of living with other Jews. He could say about every Jew in Chutz La'aretz, it's like a lot statement, especially some of them Jews in Chutz La'aretz live with each other. They don't necessarily go to parties of Ovdei Kechavim. So to make such a blanket statement, Yisrael b'chutz la'aretz, Ovdei Avodah Zarah b'tarahen, and the word Ovdei Avodah Zarah, and even if he uses the word b'tara, which means they're not doing it maliciously, they're doing it with a sense of purity and innocence, it's still very difficult to understand how a Tana would say this. So on this, the Maamar explained that what he meant was the word b'tara doesn't only mean b'tara purity in the sense that they don't want to do Avodah Zarah, they're just doing it. It means it's a different type of Avodah. It's Avodah Zarah in its in a more subtle form. Not Avodah Zarah kipshutei chas v'shalom. B'sosha b'chutz la'aretz are not chashud. Any Jew is not chashud on this. Kol Yisrael b'cheskas kashrus, especially when it comes to Avodah Zarah, which is one of the three cardinal principles on which we say Yaharik V'Yavar. What we're talking about is the shoirish, the nekuda, betara. The reason he uses the word betara is because basically it's Avodah Zarah in a much more subtle, transcendent, more abstract form, which is a nekuda of Avodah Zarah, a shoirish of Avodah Zarah. And what was the concept? The concept is that in Chutz La'aretz, the levushim are more thick, they're more dense. The word in English would be more opaque. Levushim gasim, they're more opaque. They're mailim or master more. The levushim of Teva are more mailim or master. Obviously, everywhere in the world, there are levushim of Teva. Hashem is expressed only through Elokim in our world, or generally through Elokim, besides in unique situations and moments. But still, there's a difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Eretz Yisrael, the energy is a different energy.
When he's Melamed Schus, he's Melamed Schus on the basis of the fact that, after all, they're in a place where Kedusha is opaque, it's not so easy for them to chop it. Why isn't he instead Melamed Schus on the fact that it wasn't Begufan, but it was only Besichla? Why is that a lesser way to be Melamed Schus on them? He could have chosen that as a way to say, it's not Mamish Avodah Zarah, because after all, they're not bowing.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, it's both. Okay,
both. Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah, both. Side the nekuda of Chutz La'aretz, side the nekuda of betara. So, Mela, what happens is not that they bow their heads to idols, but the concept of bowing a head represents you submit to something. Why do you submit to it? Because you see in it value, and not always in a bad way. You came in, you bowed down. Bowing down is not always. It's not hishtachavot avodah zarah is asur. It's one of the four avodas that's asur in every avodah zarah. Even if there's different types of worship, first avodah that's always forbidden is hishtachavot. But what's the concept of bowing down? It represents that you attribute tremendous value and significance and chashivus to this, and that's why you bow down. In Chutz La'aretz, because the levushim of Teva are so much more powerful, so therefore what happens is we bow our heads to Teva. I give it tremendous significance. I give it tremendous power. That's the idea. Maybe not physically I bow my head, but emotionally. And you know, sometimes when you emotionally bow your head, it's as powerful as physically bowing your head, or sometimes more. And sometimes I give over my head. I give over my heart. Ich verliere sich. I lose myself in the process. And that's what often happens to people in work and business. And really in other issues, work and business is just a common metaphor because we need to do it every day, or almost every day, in order to generate revenue, at least many of us. A person loses themselves. They lose their soul. As you'll say, efakoivtzich, a person, he sells himself, his head, his heart, his pnimius, his neshama, his wife, his children. We spoke the other day, somebody asked me in the Nusach of Pidyon Haben, a very strange text. If you ever did a Pidyon Haben, if you ever did the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben, or you observe the Pidyon Haben, or you'll open a siddur, you'll see that by a Pidyon Haben, the Kohen speaks to the father. The Kohen says, "But my be'ina, what would you like? Do you want b'nei b'chayrich? Do you want your oldest son? Or do you want the chamisha slayim? Or do you want the money that you owe me? What do you want? Which one?" So the father says, "I would like my son. The halach is the money, takes the money, gives the son. Make a bracha, shayin mazel tov." This question is a strange question. Chamisha slayim today is, I don't know, $30, $40. Those who are very machmir give $70, $80. Somebody asks the father, "What do you want? $40 or your child?" He says, "By the way, I'd like my child instead of the $40. What type of question is this? Al derech haremez, the Kohen is not asking for today. He's asking for the future. Now the boy is 30 days old, that's good. But in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the wife calls you and says, "Chaim needs you. I don't have time." Why not? Somebody got to support you. Somebody got to make chamisha slayim. So the Kohen says, "But my bina, what do you want? You want your child or you want the money?" A lot of times people sacrifice that which is most sacred to them, and they know that it's most sacred to them. They're not going to deny. They don't say, "I don't care about my..." No normal person says, "I don't care about my children. I don't care about my marriage. I don't care about my life. I don't care about my God." I do care. But in the process of levushay hateva, I lose it. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I forget. Why? Als we say that. Klei shlishi. Okay. It's al pi Kabbalah. I lose myself. Sometimes I sell myself. Why? Again, because the levushim are thick, so I start worshipping them. I worship them. And when I worship them, because all based on the mistake of the connection that's lacking between Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and Elokim. That's the Nekuda. So this can, of course, happen in Eretz Yisrael also. And it doesn't mean in Chutz La'aretz it has to happen. But I mean that in Chutz La'aretz it's a very, very common thing. What we call, you worship the dollar. Right? There was once a Jewish comedian who said that his father came to America believing that the streets of America are paved with gold. They used to call this place the Golden Medina. Everything was paved with gold. He says when he came here, he discovered three things. The roads were not paved with gold. Number two, the roads were not paved at all. Number three, he had to pave them. But so in that process, very often, in Chutz La'aretz, this is what Rabbi Shmuel means, Ovdei Avodah Zarah, Betahara. Betahara, it's the Nekud, it's the Shirish. Doesn't mean they're over Chas v'Shalom on Avodah Zarah B'Poyel. The Nekud of Avodah Zarah. What's the Nekud of Avodah Zarah? It's always the period of Havaya V'Elokim in different formats and manifestations, from the highest to the lowest. In fact, the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Aleph, gives a fascinating history of Avodah Zarah. It's very unique that a Sefer of Halacha, like the Rambam, should dedicate a significant amount of the chapter, very long space, to discuss history. The Rambam discusses how it happened, how history evolved till Avram Avinu. The reason the Rambam does it, and the Farshim struggle, is because he's trying to... Avodah Zarah starts in consciousness, doesn't start in Maisa. So the Rambam has to explain the shirish of it, because it's about understanding the nekuda of Avodah Zarah, because Avodah Zarah doesn't start with Maisa. It starts belev, it starts b'mayach. The nekuda the Rambam says over there is, it did not begin with what we call Avodah Zarah today. It began actually with Emunah. The Rambam says that the people felt, if a married couple, you buy a gift to a spouse. Why? To show appreciation. An anniversary, a birthday, you buy a gift to a parent, to a brother, a sister, a child. You show appreciation. So the people said, God has a lot of people working very hard, a lot of creatures, a lot of constellations, a lot of forces working very hard. It's nice to show appreciation. It's nice to show appreciation. Don't take the moon for granted. Don't take the sun for granted. Don't take the galaxies for granted. Don't take the water for granted. Don't take the Nile in Egypt. Don't take the Nile for granted. Don't take wind.
You tip the workers.
You tip the waiter, yeah. You got to tip the waiter, and in some good restaurants, the tip is Taisvus Meruba Liquor. So there's the tip. You're paying as much as you bought a little hot dog for $2, and then your tip is $18.
It's a good restaurant.
Huh? So the tip, you got to tip. And you got to give a nice gift. And what if the waiter's doing an extra special job? And what if you want to get on the waiter's good side because the waiter has access to the kitchen? So the tip becomes more dramatic. And what if the person who's working is really, a lot was delegated to them and they have a lot of say, so you tip even more. That's how the Rambam understands the beginning of Avodah Zarah. What is it based on?
What's the side for the Rambam again?
Hilchos Avodah Zarah, the laws of idolatry, chapter 1. In Mishnah Torah. It's a fascinating chapter in Rambam. He goes through at length Barichas. And it's a Sefer of Halacha. The Rambam usually doesn't go into history in Sefer Mishnah. It's not a book of history. It's a Sefer of Halacha. He gives Halacha. Hilchos Avodah Zarah, you would expect. He would start saying, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this, as he usually does. But here he goes in a whole long Arichas, not even with Matan Torah, much before Avram Avinu and so forth. The Rambam says that's how all the sacrifices began to Avodah Zarah. All because God would want that. God wants you should appreciate. A CEO wants you should appreciate the workers. Don't be so selfish. Yes, there's a person on the top. There's somebody on the top. There's somebody doing the work. And sometimes you want to flatter the person doing the work. And for me, the Rambam said it evolved and it devolved, I should say, until the most extreme and heinous and brutal and sometimes sadistic types of Avodah Zarah, and then he says, Avram Avinu kivon shenigmal eison zeh hischil shoytet bedait. As Avram Avinu matured, he began to ponder reality, and he initiated a revolution. He would go from city to city and teach and make conferences and gather people and teach them. But what do we see from here? It doesn't begin necessarily with complete Avodah Zarah, complete denial of Hashem. It's all in the lashon of this Maamar. It's all the period of Havaya Velikim. Hayispoyer Hagarzen B'yad HaChaytzapay. One thing you don't do in a restaurant is you don't tip the forks and the knives and the bowls. Why not? You should tip them also. Without a bowl, how would you eat the soup? And without a fork, how would you eat the steak? And without a knife, how would you cut the chicken? And without a spoon, how would you eat the yoich, the soup? Everyone understands that you're not going to tip because the waiter is a Baal Bchira. The waiter could have gotten another job and been paid even more. So you show appreciation to a Baal Bchira. The garzen, the yoich, the bowl, the spoon is a complete tool. It has absolutely nothing. And by flattering the spoon and speaking to it, even if you could see the atom is moving and you think it's alive, you're wasting your time. So it depends how much chshivas do you give to the garzen. You stroll shop chutzlarts, and chutzlarts, it's very easy to give a lot of chshivas to the garzen. You don't see it as an axe. You see it as an initiator. Sometimes you see it even as the boss. Even if not as the boss, but somebody who has pull. And the presidents, all the president's men, the people who surround the president, you want to be nice to the people who surround the president. Why? Because they're not garzonim, they make decisions, and they have pull, and they have access. People pay millions and millions of dollars to lobbyists. What are lobbyists? Lobbyists are connections. It's called protectia. They're not making the decisions, but they give you access to those who make decisions. Some of you who know about gaboyim in different circles, yeah? Gaboyim is a very big job today. It's not Parshas. The Gabbai is Rosh Tevis, Ona b'chayach dulas yamincha. Yeah? Not only a Gabbai in a Shul. Sometimes Gaboyim are very important. Why? Because the Gabbai is not just a garrison. At least in his mind, he's not a garrison. Etc., etc. So therefore, when that happens, Taka, you may have a point. The president's men are the president's men. When it comes to the world, to the process of the world, in other words, the ultimate truth, you have to be able to distinguish between the chaytzim and the garrison and understand that Hashem hu Elokim, and this is not an easy thing to live with. Mashal mahadavadaima, to give a mashal to this. Somebody walks into a bank. You want to withdraw money, you want to buy a house, and you heard you're an immigrant, and you heard that to have a house, you have to give a down payment. Say a down payment is $150,000 for a nice house. So you walk in, they say, where do you get the down payment? Where do you get money? In the bank, you get money. So he goes into the bank, he wants to withdraw $150,000. So you ask somebody, how do you do this? They say you have to fill out a withdrawal slip. A withdrawal slip. Says that's how you get the money? Yeah. You fill it out and you get the money. So he fills out a withdrawal slip, but he knows it's a lot to ask, 150 grand in one shot. So he decides he's not just going to give a withdrawal slip. He's going to give a withdrawal slip as zoinson as alchas, like a ksuva. You ever see those ksuvas? They think it's a sgul of a shalom bayis. If the ksuva is laminated with avonim, toivus, margalis, you're wasting the money. Give it to the shriga better. Be shalom bayis. Or give it to the wife. But he takes the withdrawal slip and gives it to a laminator and blows it up and has it laminated and designed and decorated and then framed with one of the most expensive frames in New York City. It's a beautiful, beautiful withdrawal slip. And it's signed with names. Alles is good. And you deliver it to the teller of the bank, and you're waiting for him or for her to be swept off their feet with such a withdrawal slip. How can they resist you? And she types in the account number, and she says, you have 63 cents left in the account. No, I need $150,000. Sir, you have 63 cents, maybe $63 left in the account. I can't give you. But what do you mean? They told me that the withdrawal slip is the way to get the money. Is that true? Everybody lied? No. The withdrawal slip is the way to get the money if you got the money in the bank. If you don't have the money in the bank, you can give me 1,000 withdrawal slips. You can decorate them von Heinbesmorgen. It's futile. Now you're laughing at my metaphor, but this metaphor is a real metaphor. So somebody says, so we don't use withdrawal slips? We do use withdrawal slips. Because that's the system a bank sets up. You teufus, Rabbi Yaakov, you teufus, the marshal. The system that a bank sets up is that if you want the money, you need a withdrawal slip. That's the way. Are there times they could break the rules? I'm sure there's times they could break the rules, but this is the way it happens.
How do you deal when the garrison is about here? It's another person.
Very good question. What if the garrison is Ishkin garrison is a Balbchira? He'll be a garrison Mela. He's a Balbchira when it comes to himself. He's not a Balbchira when it comes to you. Huh? Like a Gabbai, yeah. We're explaining that the reason we tip a waiter is because the waiter has a bal bchira. You can say the same thing in the world. Maybe if we're talking about nature, there's no bchira. But people do have bchira. The answer to that is a very good question. Very good question. The answer to that is a person has bchira what to want to do to me. What happens to me, that doesn't depend on a person's bchira. You understand what I'm saying? There's two separate things. There's what a person wants to do, that he has bchira for. What he decides to do, that he has bchira for. What happens to me, b'poyel mamish, that's not his bchira. I can try to do a lot of things. Some of them work out, some of them don't work out. This means that when I'm experiencing something, it may happen through a particular person. But that person's decision is not the reason that happened to me. That person made a decision. And that person carries the consequences for this decision. So the same is true with everything in life. This is what we call kelim, levushim. Do you need a withdrawal slip to access the money? You do need. But the most important thing is to have the money in the account. If you have the money in the account, the withdrawal slip is half torn, it's not torn, it's beautiful, it's not beautiful, it's perfect, it's not perfect. Now imagine somebody sacrifices their whole life for the withdrawal slip. You'd laugh from them, it's a joke. You're losing everything for nothing, this is nothing. It's important, yeah, you have to do it. But that's not where your focus is. Put the money in the bank. Focus is not on the document, on the check, or the withdrawal slip, or the deposit slip. The focus is on the money. Liya kesef v'liya zov nu'um Hashem tzvos, it says in Tehillim. So sometimes a person builds their kelim and builds their levushim and builds their withdrawal slips and builds it and decorates it and renovates it and beautifies it and glorifies it and worships it and flatters it and makes sure it's the most perfect and the most beautiful. But from a business point of view, they're investing in the wrong place. Why? Because it's a garzen b'yad ha'chaytzev. It's a levush. Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz. In chutz la'aretz, where the levushim are dense, here there's more room for this concept, betara, where a person loses himself, loses his head, literally loses his head, if halir tekap, sells his soul.
Question?
Yeah.
So you say that a person makes a decision to do something. For example, there's a creditor. He sends the marshal out,
Yeah.
He makes a decision to do that. Now,
Yeah.
whether the marshal is effective, you're saying that's
Right.
not within the decision.
Right. He can decide to do what he wants. Whether he's effective is a whole different situation.
The Abishter is going to control the outcome.
Right. Yeah. That's why the Baal Shem Tov was told by his father. They say the last words the Baal Shem Tov's father told him before he passed away was, he says, I want to tell you two things. He was a little boy when he became a Yosem. He was only 5. He had a father, Rebbe Eliezer. And he said, Yisrolik, his name was Yisrolik. He said, I want to tell you two things. Sollst du schmeide haben von kein Sach und keine nicht auf der Welt chutz von dem Eberste. Sollst lieb haben jede Yid mit der ganze Herz und Neshama. Don't fear anybody or anything but Hashem. Should love every Jew with all your heart and soul. Those became the two pillars of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. Those two pillars. What does it mean, don't fear anybody and anything but Hashem? How could you not fear? If you're a normal person, there's somebody you're afraid of, unless you're insane. Every person has somebody on top that I want to impress, that can control my fate, that I need, whatever career you are. And even those of us who are aspiring to have the billions, they're also in a competition of their own. I need to transcend you, I need to get ahead of you. There's always somebody who's more powerful than you. In this world, there's always somebody who's more powerful than you. Or you're afraid that somebody's going to be more powerful than you. And the greatest tyrants and dictators lived with this paranoia. So we'll say is not to be afraid of anybody or anything. But the truth is, he wasn't telling him don't be afraid of anybody or anything. Don't be afraid of anybody but Hashem. When somebody has real Yiras Hashem, then they don't have to be afraid of anybody or anything. If not, you're normal, you should be afraid of some people.
It's
not an easy thing. So the Baal Shem Tov's father wasn't just saying, don't be afraid of anybody and anything, and just that's a crazy piece of advice. Some things you have to be afraid of. What he was saying is, if you'll be afraid of nobody and anything but Hashem, then you don't have to be afraid of anybody or anything. Then you don't have to be afraid of anybody. If not, you should be. Because there's a lot of powerful people out there, a lot of sharks out there. You should be. And this, once a person loses this, even in Shirish, it trickles down in a lot of ways. One's dealing with a particular situation. So there was a Yid, he's a big Talmud Chacham and a Paisik. So he tells me that I asked him, it was a certain situation. I said, what happened with Sagurim Ipnei Ish? Not to be afraid. So he says, I'll tell you a story and you'll understand the answer. He says, there was once a Rav who had a din Torah. I mean, it's an anecdote, but it's a good one. He had a din Torah. There was a court case. And somebody slipped an envelope under the table. Somebody slipped an envelope, as they say. No. He took a look at the envelope during lunch break. And then suddenly, after lunch break, his psak, his ideas gravitated towards the man who handed him the envelope. Classic case of Hashoichad Yaver. And he gave, the verdict was like this man, the other person comes over to the Rav afterwards. He says, listen, ich bin a praktischer Mensch. I'm a practical person. I'm a businessman. I need money. I like money. You need money. You like money. We all need money. We all like money. I also understand. You know what? I also take bribes. I take bribes. I understand you. But one thing, you're a big man. $5,000, you sell your soul. I understand that the guy gave you a check for $500,000. It's worth it. But a distinguished person like you, for $5,000, that I don't understand. Verkaufst du eine Neshama for $5,000? That doesn't make sense. At least $500,000, you should have a price tag. How much are you going to sell your soul for? Not for garbage. I have to say it in Yiddish. He says, Chaim, mein teurer Freund. Ich hab schon verkauft die Neshama 30 Jahre zurück für $1 Million. Sind jemals das als Revach Noki? I already sold my soul 30 years ago for $1 million. Ich bin schon a Verkäufte. My soul is, now everything is just profit. You know, it's dividends. Now it's just revach. It's the profit that comes in from the bank. Here 5, here 10, here 5. Ich bin schon a Verkäufte Neshama. That's it. My soul is sold. This was this man's answer to me. Did I secure it? Everything else, since then, it's als revach. That's it. What do I care? Another dollar, another buck. If you have a house, it's making revenue. It's making whatever it's making. It's all revach. You're already paid up. But it represents something. It's called a verkaufte neshama. Verkaufte neshama means a sold soul. So it's not always in such blatant and graphic terms as bribery. It's sometimes in a subtle way. The neshama is a verkaufte. The neshama is sold. There's a lack of true authenticity. True integrity, true wholesomeness. There's a brokenness. Why? It's all because there's the lack of this oneness, the yichud. So now we come to the last piece. Actually, the last piece. Valpi hanal.
It's what withdrawal slip and the money. I don't quite.
I was just giving a mashal that you need a withdrawal slip to take out money from a bank. I can't go to the teller and say, my name is YY Jacobson, I have an account here, yeah? I have $63, I want it. She'll say, go, fill out the slip. I mean, I know today it's an ancient metaphor because you do it on the telephone, chas v'shalom, to go into a bank. But for those few of us who still go into the bank, so what I was saying is you need a withdrawal slip, and you need to fill it out, and you have to put in the right name. You need a keli. This is the keli. This is the way of accessing the money. But you don't go laminate it and decorate it. It's worthless. Why?
What is in real life? I mean, I don't look at
in real life is that Hashem's hashpah comes through kelim. There are withdrawal slips. Your business, your company, your factory, your job, your employment, your boss, your stocks, your real estate, whatever it is. Those are kelim. Those are the withdrawal slips. And as he explains, you need them because the hashpah here has to come in gashmis. It has to translate into money. You can't eat atzilus here. In Gan Eden, you can eat atzilus. Here you have to eat bagels. Bagels cost $1.50. So you have to have the hashpah to come into physical food, to come into physical money, to come into physical clothes. So in Mela, the kelim that are those kelim through which Havaya comes are kelim of Gashmias. So there's different withdrawal slips. So it comes to law, there's a lawyer, and it comes to medicine, there's a doctor, and it comes to food, there's a nutritionist, it comes to back pain, there's a chiropractor or Dr. Sarna. V'chuli, whatever it is. Every nekuda in life has kelim, right? All of life is through kelim. But what is it really? It's a keli, it's a withdrawal slip. So do you need it? Yeah. Do you say, I don't do this, sorry, I don't do this. I stay home and the money comes from the sky? It doesn't. You have to go to the bank and take out the money. But you don't give over your neshama to the withdrawal slip and think that's what's good, that's where it's going to be. And you lose sight of everything else, and you lose your connection with everything else. It's just Torah, avoid the dvekas. Al pi anal yuvan mashakasav b'doira flaga v'nasa lanu shem. This is why it says, now by the doira flaga, if we remember, introduced the concept earlier, that the doira flaga said, v'nasa lanu shem. Let's make a name for ourselves. And the Arizal says that the Jews in Mitzrayim were a Gilgul of the doira flaga. And their subjugation, their work with mortar and bricks, was a continuation and a tikkun for the bricks that they made then by the doira flaga. So Chazal say, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Koftes, the Medrash says, Taka also Rabbi Shmuel, interesting, Rabbi Shmuel says both. Rabbi Shmuel also, Ein Shem Ela Avodah Zarah. What's Pshat V'nasa Lanu Shem? Avodah Zarah. Shazah Yechet Doira Flaga. What's Pshat? Shem is Avodah Zarah. It says, Shefridu es Hashem Elokim M'Shem Avaya. V'nasa Lanu Shem means, V'nasa Lanu Shem, we're going to turn the shame into something. Why? V'nasa Lanu Shem means we want to make ourselves a name. He says, the word is, V'nasa Lanu Shem, the shame is now created into something separate. Meaning, Shem Elokim was separated from Havaya. So shame, the shame now becomes its own reality. So what happens? The moment you separate, the moment Shem Elikim becomes its own mitzias, so now all the memutzayim, the intermediaries, become the most important thing. That's the source, that's the shayrish of all of Avodah Zarah. What's the Nekud of Avodah Zarah? The Nekud of Avodah Zarah is that I worship something or anything in the world outside of oneness, outside of the true oneness. I give it real significance and not see it simply as a channel for the Ur Ein Sof. And this is temptations, this is experiences, this is encounters, this is struggles, this is everything in life. There's no nekuda in life that is not a channel. Sometimes the levushim are very thick. Sometimes the levushim are very heavy, but it's a channel. In Mitzrayim, they repair the mistake of the Doira Flaga.
Whoa, wait a minute. Halal Avodah Zarah, halal Avodah Zarah.
1 second, a minute. That was the issue. Halal Avodah Zarah is because it was a Gilgul of those neshamas. Whenever you're a Gilgul of a certain neshama, you're going to deal with everything that neshama had to deal with. Sometimes a person comes into this world, they're dealing with a lot of stuff because of a previous Gilgul. And it's not a mistake. Now there's no mitzvah, it doesn't say anywhere you have to know what your previous Gilgul is. Some people go around their whole life trying to figure out their Gilgul. And tell them, instead of figuring out your Gilgul, why don't you figure out your life today? But the truth is that there's something tempting in it, because of a lot of our life today is defined by a Gilgul. So it says on the Arizal that he would look at somebody and he could say what Gilgul you are. Today you have to be very, very careful with these things, because as somebody once said, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know, especially if they're charging. So you have to be very, very careful, because there are charlatans. There are Pashat charlatans. It's called Fakayf Neshamas. And there are gullible people. You hear Gilgulim, you see an ad in the paper, Gilgulim, Meloift, Gilgulim. I'm not saying everybody is a charlatan. I'm just saying there are charlatans out there. So as a result of this, the concept of Gilgul is where there's sometimes a soul is carrying a lot. And the special reason, a special nekuda, the soul comes in to this world. And there's certain experiences that are similar. So that's why there are experiences in Mitzrayim that are similar to the Aflaga. But v'zeh, when you sha'avdu avedas perach b'chaymer u'b'levenim, l'saken esachet d'vayhila e'm'levein le'evan. And that way, in Bereshis, they are making bricks into stones. In other words, they didn't have stones in Bavel, as Rashi says, so basically they molded bricks. And in Mitzrayim, they're doing the same thing. Why are they doing the same thing? Because they have to go back to the same place in order to repair the mistake. As the Rambam says from Masechta Yoma, Hechidami Tshuva, what is Tshuva? Ba'isa Makam, Ba'isa Zman, Ba'isa Isha. You got to go back to the similar situation to redo it, but in a different way. So the Deir HaFlaga is doing things similar to the Mitzrayim is doing similar things. As explained elsewhere, Barichas, that the Deir HaFlaga, the Deir of Mitzrayim, is going back to the situation of the Deir HaFlaga to repair it. But here comes the difference. Vayidei shibud Mitzrayim, ro b'yitzias Mitzrayim, ech shavaya v'elikim kol echad. But as a result of their work, what they saw in Mitzrayim was, before Yitzias Mitzrayim, they saw the manifestation of Hashem and Elikim as one. V'hainu ha'oises v'amoifsim the Mitzrayim b'asara makas u'kriyas yamsov shenisgal l'mata gilu ha'oises ha'moifsim yoitzim midarkei ha'teva. The miracles of the 10 plagues. And then Kriyas Yamsuf, what happened? They saw down here miracles that were beyond nature. Hariro gili alakush shalamayla min ha'teva mamash. So in Mitzrayim, they saw the absolute manifestation of Havaya v'Elikim kol echad, because Teva suddenly yielded to that which was L'mayla min HaTeva, beyond nature. V'ima yoshem Elikim master b'emes chas v'shalom al shem Havaya, echi yegili L'mayla min HaTeva l'mata. If Elikim was a real blockage of Shem Havaya, there's no way that there could be a Gilui L'mayla min HaTeva l'mata. It's impossible, because it's a real block. There's Havaya in his realm, and there's Elikim in its realm. What's the expression? When you're in Rome, what's the expression? Huh? You do what the Romans do. This belongs to Rome. Lahavdil, this belongs to one Hashem. This is a hell of a Hester on Havaya. This conceals Shem Havaya. So that means Teva is ultimately defined as Teva. Why is it defined as Teva? Because Shem Elikim is really master on Shem Havaya. And that's why when Moshe meets Paroi, Paroi's expression is Lo Yodati Es Havaya. Lo Yodati Es Havaya. Elikim, even the Egyptians had a shaykhis too. That's why Yosef, when he speaks to Paroi, he says Biladoi Ha-Elikim Yana Shloim Paroi. Elikim will respond to Shloim Paroi. What does Elikim represent? Elikim is Lashon Rabbim. It's plural. The only name of Hashem that's plural. It says in Shulchan Aruch about the Shemus, when you're mechaven in Tefillah, I think in Siman Chafei, that when you say Shem Elikim, you have to think the master of all the koiches. In other words, it's Hashem as the one who is manifested in all the koiches of the Bria. In all the powers of the Bria, it's Shem Elikim. When you separate Elikim from Havaya, what does this mean? It means Teva has its own rules. Now this itself could come out in thousands of different philosophies, in higher ways and lower ways, until ultimately it trickles down to the philosophy of Mitzrayim. But the philosophy ultimately is Lo Yadati Es Havaya. And therefore, might is right. Paroi says, I could subjugate the people. I could. If I could, I will. I have that. Paroi himself is a demigod. And you see, and this is an important idea we're going to see here. I hope Be'ezer Hashem to finish the Haimer tomorrow. That Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't just preaching to Paroi, let the people go. I don't know if you ever thought about this. When you read the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're not used to reflecting what if. Okay? But if you were God, I know that's a weird question, and you wanted to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, what would you do? You would take them out. You would take them out. What's this ganze Maisa with Paroi? Who has time? Who has patience? A ganze Maisa, they're going back like this game in school between the principal and the kids. Oh. Take them out. You want to take them out? Take them out. He goes back and back and back, and it's like almost this whole spiel. I'll show you. And Paroi is in, and then he's out, and he's in, and he's out, and he's out, and he's out. But obviously, it wasn't just he wanted to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. There was a whole consciousness that had to be introduced. What was it? The Nikud of Havayahu Elikim. Not Stam, I could take them out. A whole different Nikudah. How to understand Teva. And that was a paradigm shift that allowed a new consciousness to exist in the world, as we will see.
It's really fundamental.
Continue tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem.
It's fundamentally the last Ramban.
Yes.
It says there, when he says the whole point of this, I'll write it, send it to you as an email because I spoke about my son. At the end, the last piece he says is, well, Yedei HaNisim, you should come to realize that even with the Nis Torah is
No, it doesn't. Yes. The Nikuda. The Nikuda.
as usual.
Beautiful word on lamer, huh? Lamer. From Shabbos.
Also, he's
Ruchim Aboyim Malkam.
also welcome. Also,
The Gemara says, what is tshuva? Tshuva is same time, same place, same woman. In other words, you have to go back to those experiences and redo them.
the definition of insanity is going to do the same things.
No, you're going to do it differently.
But the definition of insanity
You're right.
is
You're doing the same thing and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity.
so why would you expect things to be different when you go back to the same?
Because your consciousness changed.
That's a scary thing to say that you
So by insanity, I can change my consciousness also and do the same things. So that negates the whole concept of insanity, then, right?
No, the idea is that when a person changes their thoughts about something, they'll change their actions about it. You can come back, you can be in the same situation, but you're going to respond differently. Take it in a marriage, yeah? A wife says something to a husband and he's triggered, Azari, or the other way around, yeah? If he works on himself, she works on herself, a year later, a month later, the same comment is said to you, and you may still be triggered, but you have tools to deal with it. You could tell yourself, I'm being triggered now because X, Y, Z, and it hurts, and it's painful, and a part of me wants to go back to that place where I was and respond the same way. But because of my awareness, I'm now going to choose a different path. I'm going to choose to respond a different path, even though I can't completely extricate that. The same is true with so many other areas. That's what tshuva is. Tshuva means you're tested, you might be tested with the same facts, but my approach is a different approach. So a Gilgul, the soul comes down, it has those experiences, right? But now it can do things a little differently. It can develop a new consciousness. And as a result of its life in this Gilgul, it can develop a consciousness, an experience, and wisdom, and respond differently. And that's what's called a tikkun. There are things the soul completes, and then there are those things the soul didn't complete, or still needs to go through, or maybe has to give to others, so the soul comes back. That's what a Gilgul is. So in that process, there's a lot of stuff and experiences that I bring from the past. I know a woman once came to me. She told me every night she's in Auschwitz. She goes into bed, she's in Auschwitz. The whole night. She's in her 30s. She lives there. She screams at night. I don't know about Gilgulim. I'm not one of these guys. But it was pretty obvious to me that she's not... you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to see. She carries a lot in her. Now, what's the purpose? I don't know what the purpose is. But she can't ignore it. You know?
It's a heavy thing to say.
Also, ich sage da Rizal.
I understand. What does that mean? I thought we were lawful.
Take a look at the Torah la Harizal Parshas Noach. Also, ich sagte
So he's telling me that when the
that the Yidden of Misreading were a Gilgul of the Torah flood. That's how Rizal
Man, ich habe
says.
mich stangen von der Jiden mit Zweifel. Say that I'm come from a flock. It's kind of let down in my ego over here.
Really?
Yeah, I don't feel that great about being Jewish now. What's up?
You have the swarm of kids. You have kids for Rizal by you.
I understand.
I could bring it in. I could send you
What
a
does it
copy.
mean? It's hard to understand.
Okay, mit auf reden. Mit auf durchreden der Minion. Mit auf durchreden der Minion.
It's kind of hard to me to put my head around.
Mit auf durchreden der Minion.
Okay, maybe there's really want to be. I'd rather be in the Shul Yeah, it's only relative everything.
So the Arizal teaches that many of the souls, doesn't mean all of the souls, but many of the souls who were Mitzrayim were reincarnated from the generation that built the Tower of Babel known as the Der Haflaga. Explained before, the reason they're called Der Haflaga is not just because of the punishment that they were divided. Niflaga means pilug, they were divided. But it also represents their own mistake. And their mistake was that they personified the concept of plukta, of pilug, of division, of pirut. And that is basically that they embodied the pirut between two things, between Havaya and Elikim. And that's v'nasa lanu shem. Chazal say on this, shem is avodah zarah. All avodah zarah, even in the most subtle way, represents a plukta, a pilug. The idea that a person starts seeing the concealments of life as ultimately real. And therefore, it becomes a trap for the person. Where the emes is the yichud of Havaya v'Elikim, ata hareis ladas, ki Hashem hu Elikim, which means, as he puts it earlier, where the truth is, as he put it, the lashon was that ein shum davar master klal. There's never really a moment of concealment. There's always a moment of opportunity. And that's a very, very serious paradigm shift between a life of haflaga, of plukta, where there's a real machloikus, so to speak, between heaven and earth. There's a real machloikus between light and darkness. There's a real machloikus between good and bad. There's a real machloikus between ruchnius and gashmis. There's a real machloikus between soul and body. There's a real machloikus between the higher self and the lower self. There's a real machloikus between Nes and Teva. There's a real machloikus with what's right and with what I want. There's a real machloikus, that's maybe the biggest machloikus. There's a real machloikus between the pnimius and the chitzainis. It's all a machloikus. The question is, who wins the machloikus? Sometimes this one wins, sometimes that one wins. That whole premise is a mistake. It's a natural mistake. It's a mistake as a result of tzimtzum, as a result of halikim, as a result of the perception of concealment. But it's a mistake because really everything is only an opportunity to connect. Everything is an opportunity for a relationship. Everything is an opportunity to go deeper. Even a challenge is not an obstacle. It's an opportunity. Just like the teacher is never concealing. He's always giving and bringing it down to the place of the student. And everything is there. You just have to be able to reveal it. B'meila ein shum davar master klal. So nothing really is concealing. The fact that a person in his own mind creates the hester, that's the idea of the haflaga, of the period, of this machlaikus, of this concept, of these two realities. And the way it's expressed is in every moment in life. The whole avodah of a person you could sum up as the avodah, the consciousness, to be able to be meyachid, Hashem and Elikim. And as he was ma'idach at length, the way it manifests itself, particularly when it comes to business, when it comes to one's involved, that which requires, itaka requires, one's involvement in the material world. And thus, finally, we come back to the idea of the Arizal, that many souls during Mitzrayim were a Gilgul, were a reincarnation of the Der Haflaga. And the Levena, using the Levenim, the bricks, the Avodah over there reflected and was a tikkun for the Avodah by Mitzrayim. But the Shibud Mitzrayim this time produced what we call the Nisim of Mitzrayim, the Gulas Mitzrayim, which, as he said, essentially demonstrated the Yichud, the unity of Hashem and Elikim.
act from the door flug is the opposite. They want to put together.
Right. So that was the tikkun. The souls of Yetzias Mitzrayim came back and fixed. They repaired that which happened in an earlier Gilgul. So now we continue. V'zeu Shamru Razal. This is the meaning of a story that the Gemara says. It's a difficult story to understand. In Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Tes, Masechta Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, the Gemara tells the following story. Amar loy hahu minne la Maamar. There was a min. Min is usually what we would call a heretic. Some Agoiris in the Gemara over there, Amgusha. It has two interpretations, if it's a sorcerer or a heretic. But according to many, it's the concept of a min. A min, an apikar, a heretic, told a Maamar, one of the Amirayim, Mipalgach ula'ela de Hurmiz. Your upper half, palga means from half, ula'ela and up, means your upper half, the upper half of your body, belongs to Hurmiz. Mipalgach de lasata, your lower half, from midway of your body lower, is to Hurmin, belongs to Hurmin. That's what he said. Ein Tosfos Sham. Take a look in Tosfos there. The reason he says to take a look in Tosfos is because when you look at the Gemara, according to most versions, he told him, Mepalga chula'ela de Hurmiz, Mepalga chulasata de ahurmiz. Your higher half belongs to Hurmiz, your lower half belongs to ahurmiz. Hurmiz with an aleph in as a prefix. And according to that interpretation, the meaning is a little different. Although the Nekuda, ultimately the argument is the same, but according to the first version, that's why he says Ein Tosfos, Hurmiz is the name of a demon, a shed, a demon. Ahurmiz is the Persian name for God. So he said, your higher half belongs to a demon. Your lower half belongs to Ahurmiz, which is God. But Tosfos puts in over there the girsa that he brings in this Maamar. Your higher half belongs to Hurmiz, and your lower half belongs to Hurmin. And basically, Tosfos says that Hurmiz is actually a euphemism for Hashem. Comes from the word chain, grace, in Persian. So what he was saying, and your lower half belongs to Hurmin, which is a shed, a demon. So in other words, this man was telling a Maamar. It's a very strange conversation. And there's a split in you. The higher half belongs to Hashem, Hurmiz, and your lower half belongs to demons, Hurmin. Ein Tosfos Sham. After the parenthesis, we'll go back to the parenthesis. I just wanted to read the whole Gemara. Amaloi. So Maamar tells this fellow, this min, really? Heicher shavik Hurmin lo Hurmiz lavuda maya ba'are. How does Hurmin, who is in control of the lower half, allow Hurmiz to pass water through his territory? Which means everything we take into our mouth, which is the upper half of the body, of course at some point or another is going to be passing through the channels that are in the lower half of the body. And that includes a lot of excrement and a lot of filth and a lot of dirt, etc. So he says, why would Hurmin allow Hurmiz to pass all this dirty water, all this dirty liquids through his are? Are is his karka, through his estate, his territory. That was his answer. Okay. At first glance, the question is strange. Answer is strange. What does it mean the lower half belongs to one? What is this? Is this stam a joke? So if the Gemara is just recording jokes, stam a shaita, what does it even mean the body has two different sources? There's a brain. Basic lowest level of biology is, everybody knows a healthy body works in unison, integration. To say that the lower half of the body has its own machinery, its own functionality, its own CEO. I mean, sometimes maybe it feels that way. Sometimes at some point it feels that, the higher body is not in control anymore. Yeah. A person says, ich will, but I want to stay up. But
Maybe that's what he means.
Yes, he gives it a name. This belongs to Hashem, this belongs to Hashem. So what does Maamar tell him? Why would he allow water to pass through him? But the emes is that the question, his taina wasn't such a foolish taina. It was something that people think. They reflect. He was basically expressing a certain idea. He expressed it in these words. That's why Taka chooses the Gears of Tosfos. And Maamar was answering him something. He was telling him something profound. And he's using the language that he's using as a mashal, as a metaphor. Speaking about Mishalim, this is also a mashal. What's the mashal? So let's now understand what's the teichen of the argument. So back to the parentheses. Hainu. Sheratza loymar. This man wanted to say, Shein shtei reshuyas chas v'shal. That in the world, there are two separate reshuyas, there are two authorities, two domains. V'hu inyan azav Hashem sa'aretz b'dei kechavim ha'mazalas. There's an idea that God left the earth. Not that he didn't, that he doesn't know about it, but azav Hashem, he ultimately allowed the earth and he delegated. He delegates planet Earth, b'dei kechavim, the stars, the mazalas, the constellations. V'rak ala shamayim kvoida. His glory is in heaven. In other words, in heaven, in heavenliness, in ruchnius, in transcendence, in spirituality, that's where you'll find him. That's where you'll connect to him. Ala shamayim kvoida. But in eretz, in artzius, in earthiness, it's not even suitable to say that he's completely involved and manifested. Lamata, down here, mikoidei ashpa, the sources of influence, hein hamazalas, are ultimately the mazalas, which are the heavenly constellations, the various groups of stars, which were perceived to have tremendous influence. Shein hamastidim chas v'shalom alolakos. And they run their own show, and they could truly block, and conceal godliness. This was the erroneous, koizeves means the false, shitta, the fourth false opinion of this man. And that's represented in those words. There's who you are in the higher place, and there's who you are in the lower place. And what does this mean in a person's avodah? There are times when you're in a higher mode. You're more ruchnistic, it's more shamayim. Your mind is functioning more. And then there's times when, when lower parts of the body are more alive. And as you know, the two often don't work together. So the higher parts of the body are alive, the seat of consciousness, of reflection, of purpose, of meaning, of morality, however you want to define it. But you have to realize that there's another part of the body. The other part of the body, this already has its own system, its own mahalach, and this is a different reshus, with a different balabas, with a different domain, and don't mix the two. There's times that I'm in Shamayim, and there's times that I'm in Eretz, and it's two separate realities. Now let me be a chimpanzee. An hour ago, I was a human being, but now I'm going to be a chimpanzee with everything that a chimp represents. Or another gorilla, or another ape, or another monkey, etc. Who gets excited about the bananas, and not only about the bananas. If we would only get excited about bananas, what is going to gefährlich?
Church and state. Church and state.
Church and state, yeah. Church and state, yeah. Separation. Two authorities, and we don't mix in. Could have God done it differently? Of course. But he created an Eretz, and Eretz has its own systems. The body has its own systems. It has its own channels, its own ways. There's a way of getting ashpah. In the real world, there's a way of accessing the influence. You got to go to the kechavim, you got to go to the mazalos, whatever that means. And that's the whole idea of Yisrael shebachutz la'aretz oiv di avodah zarah b'tar. From the Gemara in the Masechta avodah zarah daf ches, Rabbi Shmuel said, the same Rabbi Shmuel who said that ein shem ela avodah zarah, nasa lanu shem l'shitase. That the idea of Yisrael shebachutz la'aretz oiv di avodah zarah b'tar is that there's a source of hashpah. Because Shem Elokim is a real thing. And the kalim, the vessels, the containers, they, so to speak, take over. The systems that were created. What's the emes? The emes is that it's this is a misreading of it's a misreading of reality. We understand where it comes from, but it's a misreading of reality. Mipalga chulasata, every nekuda that happens below is the same reality that's happening above. There's no real Hester. Havayu hu elikim. Elamai, sometimes there's a nisayan. Sometimes there's a blockage which could conceal the light, but its entire purpose is to reveal. He tells me, what's the answer? What's the answer? So Alpi Pshat again, you see that the lower body is basically facilitating the higher body, right? So it's the charaya that it is one boss, it's one authority. But what's the deeper meaning? According to their erroneous perception, that the intermediaries, meaning all the kalim that the Ribbono Shel Olam created in each world, and in our world too, you have all the Mumutzayim. Mumutzayim could mean your doctor. Mumutzayim could mean your job. Mumutzayim could mean your body. Mumutzayim could mean your money, your food. Everything is a mamutza. Everything is an intermediary, a channel. Channels that we use in order to be able to live. All the Mumutzayim, which they hold are real master, they really conceal. How does Hurmin allow Hurmiz to pass water through its territory? What's the idea of passing water? How does he allow, how is there a concept of Elikus, real Gili Elikus in the world? Ubiyitzias Mitzrayim. Hariro Ba'al. That's the significance of what happened by Mitzrayim, Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why is Yitzias Mitzrayim such a central event in Jewish history? Not only central, all of Yiddishkeit today, we always say, Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Pasuk says, Laman Tisker Shem Tzescha Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha. There's a mitzvah to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim in the morning. There's a mitzvah to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim at night. Yemei Chayecha Hayamim Kol Yemei Chayecha Aleilus. Yemei Chayecha Elam Hazah Kol Yemei Chayecha Lav V'Lemais Mashiach. As we say in the Haggadah. Many of the mitzvahs we do Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. It was an event, a beautiful event, an amazing event. It's not just history. It represented a certain truth that even if we don't have Yitzias Mitzrayim physically today, the truth of Yitzias Mitzrayim is essential to the whole of Yiddishkeit. Why? What is it? Because Yitzias Mitzrayim over there they saw in a very real way the revelation of Yudke Vavke, of Havaya, of Elikus, godliness, here in this world. Im Ken Areiro, they saw, Ech Hashem Elikim Einei Master Klal Al Shem Havaya. That Shem Elikim doesn't block Havaya, Havaya Elikim Kol Echad Mamash. And Havaya and Elikim are one. And this was the whole function of all the Makkahs and everything that happened by Mitzrayim. It wasn't just to make a beautiful show and Hashem doing all these tricks in order to impress Paro. If he wanted to take the Jews out of Mitzrayim, there were much simpler and easier ways to get the Jews out of Mitzrayim. It was rather, really, Moshe Rabbeinu was giving a shiur. As I said, he was giving a shiur to Paro. If you really want, you could read the whole Chumash. You could read Shmois Ve'era Boy B'Shalach as a shiur. Moshe was speaking to Paro. He was explaining to him something. Like a good teacher, he explained it through props. He illustrated it. He illustrated it, on a screen. Not just on a screen in reality. But it was all an illustration of an idea. We make the mistake. We learn the Makkos. We learn Kriyas Yamsuf. It's another trick. It's basically somebody who was... Now we're going to pull out of the bag an even more impressive. You thought the frogs were pretty cool? Now I'm going to show you the lice. You think the lice were cool? Now I'll show you the wild beasts. And so on. And each time the trick becomes more dramatic and more consequential until the last trick. The Makkos happened. But the Makkos themselves are a mashal. They're like everything. They're also a mashal. There was a tutorial going on. There was a presentation going on. Each Makkah was trying to inculcate a certain consciousness. The Nekuda of what, that's why it was so important. If you see if you look at the conversations between Moshe and Parah, when we read Chumash, we're just used to the stories the way we heard it in our childhood. We don't revisit anything. When you read Chumash, it's good to stop and just to imagine, to think about the reality of it. Many of the conversations between Moshe and Parah are very, very strange. Extremely strange. Parah begs Moshe, for example, to get rid of the frogs. So Moshe says, if you want, I'll brag at this moment. When do you want I should get rid of the frogs? When do you want? So Parah says, I want tomorrow. So Moshe says, yes, Kidvarch, it's going to be exactly. What was this? Moshe was trying to figure out. Moshe was trying to convince Parah that he could do it at the right time. The frogs themselves were not enough. Makas Pcheiris is a whole ma'aser that he had to say kachatzois. Because if you say bachatzois, what are they going to say? Moshe is a lie. I want to ask you a question. Somebody comes to a particular population, a whole country, and says, 12 o'clock a.m., in every house there's going to be a corpse. Chalila. It happens 12:01 a.m. It's nothing. He's alive. Everybody's dead. He's alive. It happened 11:58. Wow. Like the Maisa of the police who calls somebody's driving Rabbi Lankry said it on Shabbos, the Bar Mitzvah a few weeks ago. Somebody's driving a very expensive Jaguar. It doesn't look like it's min b'minoi, that he owns it. So the policeman pulls him over, takes him out of the car, draws a circle. So you stay in this circle. Yeah, if you go out, I shoot you. And he takes a bat, and the policeman starts breaking the car, every window and the headlights and the tail lights, every part of the car. And he turns around, and this fellow is laughing. He says, "Was lachst? I'm not telling you. Please tell me. I'm not telling you. It's private." He continues to bash the car, but as a real bash, it's a Hurmin. And he's laughing away. He says, "Tell me, you're going to punish me. I promise you I won't." What happened? He says, "As you were bashing the car, I ran out of the circle 7 times." Wow, Moshe got minute wrong. That's why he says, "Kachatzois." The fact that he brings frogs, that's not enough. He said it's going to leave at 10. It left 9:30. It left 11:30. And it keeps on happening by the Marcus. What was Parah Meshuggah? Tzedreit, he was a smart person. It's all the same Nakuda. Parah didn't have a problem with crazy things happening. The Chartumim were into that the whole time. With sorcery, with Kishat, with Maises. Parah had one Nakuda. There's nothing to do with Havaya. It has to do with Koiches of Teva. You have to know how to manipulate nature. There's black magic, there's voodoo, there's magicians, there's manipulation, there's psychics, there's all types of koiches. I'm not familiar with them, but people who could manipulate stuff, whether it's real or it's perception. Good, the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah unleashes and says it's all hevel avolim, it's adimyan loyhoyev loynivra, it's damn fairy tales, never happened, there was no such a thing. The Vilna Gaon and Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea and the Laws of Avodah Zarah writes that here, Nimshach Rambam acharei ha-philosophia ha'arura, the Bir Hagra, that the Rambam was impacted by cursed philosophers who didn't like any of this. However you interpret Shittas HaRambam, Shittas HaGra, but the Nekuda here was, Parah worshipped all the koiches. They used to bring karbonas, they used to appease them. Why? There's the God of the wind, and there's the God of the sun, and there's the God of the moon, and there's the God of the stars, and there's the God of the weather, there's the God of rain, and there's the God of snow, and there's the God of fire, and there's the God of water, and there's the God of crop, of produce, of vegetation. Each has a God. And different gods, it's like wrestling matches, and you have to appease the different gods. They should be on your side. They invested in the God of the Nile because the Nile looks like a powerful God. In fact, it says in Swan, the Balatanya writes, the reason they wanted to make an egel, they wanted to make an egel is because the Jews left in Nisan. Nisan is the month, the mazel of Tleh, which is the sheep. Iyar is Shiur, which is the bull. And the Egyptians worship the sheep. And what happened was, Mazel Shiur, that god was victorious over Mazel Tleh. And that's why they managed to get the Jews out in the month of Nisan, which is on the Mazel Tleh, because Shiur defeated Tleh, and therefore took the Jews out. So what's the best way to ensure victory? You got to invest in the bull. You got to invest in the calf. That's why they make an egel. In other words, they still retained an Egyptian philosophy. So there's this koyach and that koyach. What does this mean in America in 2019? Yeah, when we're not polytheists, we're official monotheists. Hopefully. But it's the same concept. Here I'm trying to impress my boss. Here I'm trying to impress this one. Here I'm appeasing this one. Here I have to do this for you. Here I have to do this for you. I basically sell my soul to all types of koyches around me. It's the same concept. It's just we're not worshiping Nile rivers. We're a little more intelligent than that. The iPhone, yeah? The question is not if I worship. The question is what I worship. Everybody worships something. Everybody got a God. I still did not meet a person. Even atheists have a God. Everybody got a God. The question is, what is your God? People say, I don't believe in God. No, there's no such a thing. Everyone has a God. There's something you worship. It may be your ego, it may be your insecurities, maybe your depression, maybe your addictions, maybe your promiscuity, maybe your fears, maybe your trauma, maybe your pain. You're worshiping something. Something is calling the shots. Maybe your shviger, maybe your husband, maybe your wife, maybe your boss, maybe the dollar bill, maybe the New York Times, maybe a certain politician.
The whole bag. Maybe the whole bag.
Everything and more. I mean, we could find more. I don't have a God. Everybody has a God. You may be your own God. Your ego, your laziness, that's fine. Everybody has a God. Everybody worships something. The question is what? From a Yahda's perspective, if you worship a real God, if you worship the real God, then you don't have to have any other gods. So what Pari was arguing is, Moshe, Rashi says he told Moshe, you're going to teach us about magic? You're going to teach us about magic? You're going to go into a pizza shop and teach them about cheese and tomato sauce? You're going to go into a kiddush and teach them about herring? This is what we do, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, very nice. You found a few tricks of your God. He can understand that the Jews have a God, the Hebrews have a God. Say that. But it happens to be that in this game, in this arena, our God is a little more powerful. V'haraya, we're subjugating you. That was the Vart. You brought frogs? Okay. We also brought frogs. Your sticks became snakes. Okay, impressive. What happens? His chevra also do it. That's why you'll see an interesting thing. You see this, if you'll understand this, you'll see the whole story from this perspective. There's a book I once read by Rabbi David Foreman from the Five Towns. He has a book called The Exodus, the Passover that you probably passed over. And he brings out this point very, very nicely. In all the stories, for example, after the Makkah of Dever, the plagues, so the first thing it says, Paroi sent to see what happened by the Jews. And they said, Loi meis af echad. Understand? Every animal died by you. That's the only cheshbon, that's the first thing. But that was very important. I'll tell you why. Because if the idea is that this God now suddenly had power, so Moshe wouldn't be able to predict a moment. The moment became extremely important. But where's Moshe in control of this? And Moshe therefore had to say kachatzais because that would become very important. The fact that it could be predicted down to a moment, to a second, and that there's a synchronization. In other words, there's one reality in control of everything. One reality in control of everything. Or in the other words, what Mitzrayim, what v'yadu yedu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. Paro said, what was his lashon? Lo yadati es havaya. Elokim, there's koiches of teva, different koiches of teva, but the koiches of teva are real. The concept that Moshe was teaching Paro was, it was a shiur. It was the first shiur of Yadaita. It was the first shiur of Yadaita, but he was illustrating it in ways that I can't. I'm sorry.
How does Etzba Elokim fit in here?
Same Nakuda, Etzba Elokimi.
And there was something it couldn't be.
They said, "Ooh, this guy, this God, this God has some muscles we don't got." Yeah, there's Alba Nakuda. There's Alba Nakuda. And this resulted in the philosophy. The philosophy was that these gods you appease. They're hungry, they're thirsty, they want what you want, and therefore you have to appease them. There's no morality to it, and there's no right and wrong that defines the whole universe. It doesn't exist. This was the machloikas between Para. Essentially the same machloikas between the Min and the Maamar. And that's what we say in Hallel. Ramal kol goyim Hashem al hashamayim kvoidei. Mik Hashem alakeinu amagbi l'shavas amashpil liris b'shamayim of aretz. The Balatanya writes that it's a debate. In Hallel, the first chapter of Hallel, there's a debate going on. Some say, Ramal kol goyim Hashem. Sounds great. He's Ram. He's exalted above. Al hashamayim kvoidei. He belongs in heaven. Al hashamayim kvoidei. Mipal g'chol Hurmiz. The higher half belongs to Hurmiz. Al hashamayim. Yeah, over there. Yeah, unbelievable. But this is a real world. This is Eretz. What do the Jews respond? Mika Hashem Elokeinu hamagbi l'shavas. Hamashpili liris b'shamayim of Aretz. Mika Hashem Elokeinu, both names. Hamagbi l'shavas. He's higher. Therefore he could come down b'shamayim of Aretz. In other words, he's infinitely removed from Shamayim as he is from Aretz. And therefore, if he could come into Shamayim, he could come into Aretz also. It's not a stira. Or to put it differently, the whole tzimtzum is only the gilui of Havaya in the mekaymus of the world. It's bringing down bli gvul into gvul. Gvul is also bli gvul. There's no nekuda of Hester ever. So a person says, what do you mean? I have all these crazy taivas that I'm dealing with. What do you mean? No. In that gufa is the opportunity, the calling of Havaya. It's an opportunity for discovery, for growth. Even the biggest Nisayan. It's a big Hester. You could fall. But it's really Nisayan. What's the word Nisayan? To lift up. Nes. It's really a miracle. Nisayan and Nes is exactly the same shirish. V'alakim nisas Avram, l'man nasois Hashem eschem, ki menasa Hashem alekeichem eschem l'das. Elevation, tests, and miracles, all the same nekuda. Every nisayin is a challenge to reveal the nes in the teva. That's what a nisayin is. It's to reveal the miracle waiting to happen through your perspective. And when you do that, suddenly you see that the teva was only a channel for Nes. Havayahu Elokim.
We do that with Das, yeah? We do that with Das.
Das,
Yeah, Das.
yeah.
So the way to get on top of this whole situation is to keep building Das. Keep building Das, getting stronger.
Learning. You learn Chassidus, it changes the paradigm. Huh?
Can you repeat again the last concept?
I can repeat it 100 times, but I've lebem with them.
Last sentence.
The last sentence. Gedenkst nicht. Ask Dr. Michelle, he takes notes. Trust me, I forgot what I said.
I have it recorded.
No, I mean, I know the Nekuda, but I don't remember the words. But the Nekuda was that every Nisayan is really a miracle waiting to happen. But this has to be your miracle. It has to be your miracle. This is not God's miracle pre-tzimtzum. This is the human miracle post-tzimtzum. What does it mean it's a miracle waiting to happen? The ability to be able to look at teva and not be afraid of it. The worst thing is to get afraid, to be afraid, to become paralyzed. All paralysis comes from the fact that Havaya and Elikim are not one. All paralysis means I'm stuck. I'm stuck. This doesn't mean there's no challenge. There's a challenge and there's pain. But that goof is part of it, as discussed in a few of the Shiur. Challenge and paralysis are not the same thing. Challenge means that now I got to flex my muscles and take it on with dignity, with depth, with sensitivity, with attentiveness.
What's paralysis?
Paralysis is shituk. Paralysis is paralysiert. Jetzt verstehst du? Paralysiert. In English, it's paralysiert. In Yiddish, it's paralysis.
Now that you said paralysis is paralysis, now I understand.
It's different, huh? Now he does. So this was the conversation. It was a sophisticated conversation. He said, people say it all the time. Now my upper body is not in control. Now my lower body is in control. This belongs to Hurmin. This belongs to Shadim, ghosts. You don't want to call it, today we don't call them ghosts. Today we call it biological functions, cravings, whatever it is. We don't use the word Hurmin. So he said, no. How does the water pass through him? The fact that water passes through him is, there's Gilgul Elikus in the world. Where does Hurmin come in? It's because Hurmin is really only a lavush. There's no metzius of Hurmin.
Put on the guard to separate. Want to bring it together? You want one thing? Why?
Good question. So why do some have the minhag to wear a gartel by davening to separate the higher from the lower?
There's a reality in Torah that there is no...
L'chayda, we want to bring the two together. Very good question. The answer is, to bring the two together, you have to have a division. To bring the two together, you have to have a division. You have to have a differentiation. Because if not, what can often happen is, instead of bringing the higher into the lower, you bring the lower into the higher.
Yosef will think that this is Taka.
Right.
Love it to Hashem Shalom.
Yeah. In other words, one has to be able to have the differentiation and to be able to say, this is higher and this is lower. And then the lower could become infused with meaning by the higher. If there's no division, the person could just surrender and become defined by the lower. So, the same is true when the Jewish people come into the land. Here is the next step in the Yichud. We explain. The Yisrael shebechutz lords over the Avodah Zarah b'Tara. The Gemara says, "Hari davke bechutz lords, Moshe bechutz lords. Nemshechas Hashem Avodah lekel de levushi asir shemastidim out." In chutz lords, the chef of Elikos comes through the levushim of asir, which are very concealing. In Eretz Isis of Nister, in Eretz Yisrael, it goes through the levush of Yitzira. In Chutz La'aretz, it goes through the levush of Asiyah. The levush of Yitzira is a higher, it's a more fine levush. So in Eretz Yisrael, there's a more of a tangible manifestation that Elikim is not separate from Havaya. That Havaya and Elikim are one. V'hine yadua the geshem sheyesh Eretz B'Yisrael b'gashmi is k'meiken yesh Eretz Yisrael b'ruchnis. There's the physical Eretz Yisrael, but there's also the spiritual Eretz Yisrael. A person could be physically in Eretz Yisrael, but they're not in Eretz Yisrael. We say, even Jews who live in Eretz Yisrael say in Musaf of Yom Tov b'pnei chataenu golinu me'artzenu. What do you mean golinu? You're living in Eretz Yisrael. You could be in Eretz Yisrael, you could be in Golus. And then there's the concept of Eretz Yisrael. The Meiri says at the end of Ksuvas, the Meiri says, it's one of the Rishonim, that Kol Malkim Shesh B'Torah V'Yerushalayim Dinei Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is not just a place in the world. It is, of course, a place of the world. But the place of the world is also a mashal. It's a state of consciousness. So he says, V'hainu Maisa HaMitzvahs, the Eretz Hu Loshen Ratzon. The word eretz comes from the word rotzen, desire. Kamaimer Azal, the Medrash says, Lama nikrishma eretz, sherotzes salasas ritzain kain. She's called eretz because there's a rotzen. She wanted to, she was yearning, running to do the will of her Creator. Uba avoida. What is this in avoida? Inyan kiyam mitzvahs b'kabbalas al malchus shamayim shelasas ritzain kain k'mishakasav makamach. It's the avodas Hashem observing mitzvahs, accepting the yoke of heaven to do the will of the Creator. So going into Eretz Yisrael means going into a state of Eretz Yisrael, a place. In avodas Hashem, as a person lives in the world of Torah, lives in the world of mitzvahs, Kabbalas El Malchus Shamayim, this is what allows a person to be able to have access and to perceive the world as being one, as there being a place of unity between Hashem and Elokim. And that's why, as you go back to the beginning, the first question, Moshe Rabbeinu introduces the pasuk v'yadaita hayoim after speaking about, number one, the exodus of Egypt, and number two, entering into the land of Eretz Yisrael. And then he says, he wanted to understand the shaykhs. So for this, he went in to explain what Havaya is, and what Elokim is, and what Havaya, who Elokim is, etc., etc. So now we come back and he says, because through the experience of Yitzias Mitzrayim, which was step one, and the second experience of going into Eretz Yisrael, which is a land of Kedusha, both physically and spiritually, boyim, these two things help the Jew to come, lahayidiyah, to the knowledge, the conviction, the havaya hu elikim, that Hashem is elikim, v'yadat hayem k'Hashem elikim. What does it mean? V'hainu, what does this mean? Liyachid havaya v'elikim, that the person in his life should unify what is represented by havaya, represented by elikim, ech shavaya v'elikim, kul echad mamash chuli, to realize havaya and elikim are mamash.
Start on December 11th. That's it. A couple of things. When I learned the Rambam at the end of both,
then the Parshas boy, yeah.
I said, this is mamish what he's saying, because otherwise it's very hard. So you're going to mention this, how do you mention it? And he talks about tefillin. So you throw in there, like, yeah. Supposed to give you mechazik.
Right.
But I said to my son, based on, and it was this in the Kuda, the Ramban is saying the reason is because in Mitzrayim your perspective changed from Ve'era, Kel Shaddai Elokim, to Yudat Mitzrayim Ken Hashem Havaya. The whole, I think the lesson of Mitzrayim is that you can do this avoda. You did this avoda in Mitzrayim. You saw the transformation.
Yes.
And that's the transformation.
Exactly.
It's very interesting because the Rav Soloveitchik used to say in the name of Zeder Chaim, is a famous kash in the Rambam, how come Schir Yitzias Mitzrayim doesn't count in the Minyan of Mitzvahs? So a lot of answers, why should it be counted? Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, but by Seder night is, but not Schir Yitzias Mitzrayim. So the answer of Chaim Brisk is, because really Schir Yitzias Mitzrayim is Kabbalas Ol Shemayim, and that's why it's in Kriya Shema, because it's Kabbalas Ol Hashem, so you even sorry for the Kriya Shema, and therefore it's already in the Kol in the midst of Kriya Shema. But that taka makes sense. In what way is Chiras Mitzrayim
very good?
Because
that is the whole nakuda.
It's the same yichud Shema.
That is the whole nakuda.
Two other questions. Now you have to say that they Israel, even though they were the Dora Floga, they were refining and being misakin. They really, you can't say we're totally successful, like you said, by Cheta Egel, because otherwise the Malachim couldn't have taken the halal over the Zara, This is after they came to Mitzrayim, they're still screaming, what are you doing?
Right.
So they didn't burn it all out, they were working on it.
Right.
You have to say they were trying. I think the last question is, by the dark Haflaga though, V'nivna lanu hashemayim. So the symbolism was not V'nivna lanu shame of separating, of being a creases. The symbolism was taka reaching toward the sky. I don't know how you take that symbolism and say V'nasa lanu shame means they wanted to separate and say that we're going to make ourselves our own shame. The whole symbolism was exactly the opposite.
Well, as Rashi puts it, they want to make a migdal v'rosh b'shamayim.
To have a rosh, and and it will be down here, but there'll be a rosh.
Yeah, and also it will replace the need for shamayim because there's two separate universes.
What are we learning tomorrow?
I'll let you know later, okay? I just have to decide. Chazara.
Maybe tomorrow should be a synopsis.
I asked Rabbi Gans why he made so many the copies of the whole thing with the last pages, so people should take it home and chazer.
Thank you very much. Both people are very excited. I'm sure you'll hear from them.
Okay.
This idea of tailoring a shiur, oh my God, they're very, very excited.
Yeah. Chazara of the whole thing, you mean tomorrow? In ein Tag Chazara? You mean Arumreden?
Synonym noch einmal.
Arboyim Yaim V'Ninvin HaPechas.
No,
That's true.
in the surface.
Das ist Emes. Sagt, we only touched the surface. Rak Nagano b'Shichva Chitzonit. Rak b'Shem Elokim.
Sitzen so 30, 40 Jahre mit einem.
Keine Schadaite der Rabbi, Acher Rabbi Schnen. Nein, ich habe gemeint verkehrt. Am hat Scheich mit der Rabbi Schlen, darf sich es nicht beiten, jedes schon. Darf sich beiten. Es kann bleiben derselbe Gott. Sie gewinnen Ayid. Das erzählt er so, er gewinnen Ayid. Warum? Erzählt es so. So Chasse von Balatanjitz, von Baditschewe. Sie gewinnen Asreife beim Stub. It was a fire. And he started to dance. He saw the fire, he started to dance. So they thought that Nebuch, he went crazy from the Agmas Nefesh. They started to speak to him, and they saw, no, it's ganz bis Yashvas. They said, what's the grace of Simcha? He was saying, Baruch Atah Hashem shelo yasani goy, lo yasani goy. So he said, if I would have been a goy, my God would have been burnt down in the house.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.